Well, we made it all the way to volume 20. And I have to say before we get started that I'm overdue for a break. It's not that I'm sick of Lenin, but that I have a lot going on this summer. As you can see, the books are sort of gone here. I'll be traveling, moving, and teaching remotely. So this will be the last episode for 2 months, and I'll be back with volume 21 in July. It's also necessary because volume 21, the next one, marks the beginning of World War One, and thus there's going to be a lot to cover. Also want to take the time to remind viewers that doing these videos is not just an excuse for me to flex that I read all 45 volumes of Lenin's collected works, but insofar as these volumes move chronologically, it's a way for us to trace the evolution of Lenin's thinking in historical context. So, volume 20 is very much more of the same as the previous volume, except there are some important developments concerning the feud with the liquidators and the national question, particularly the Belize case. There's not much in terms of theoretical contributions here, so what I'll do is summarize Lenin's positions up to the eve of the war, mostly because the national question becomes so important when the war begins. In the feud with the liquidationists, Lenin begins to amplify his attack on them, arguing that now, after the party jointly condemned the trend in August 1912, the remaining liquidationist agitators constitute a fully fledged faction. It's a lot to say. And what's really unsurprising is that the liquidationists blame Lenin for the quote pravdais, for being factional themselves. We have a blaming back and forth on who is more factional than the other. And the thing is that the liquidationists might have a shred of truth in what they're saying, in the sense that Lenin moves in this time period to link liquidationism, revisionism, Narodism, and Trotskyism into a single oppositional faction influenced, as he says, by bourgeois propaganda. And the thing is that Lenin is, of course, a very intelligent man and understands the use of history. Many of the articles in this volume, in which he goes on the offensive, are framed as histories of the Russian Marxist movement. This allows him to frame these trends, these deviationist trends, as factions in opposition to the consistent line that he and the so called Pravdas uphold. In particular, articles like Unity, Lenin demolishes Trotsky's argument that unity is essential. Lenin asks the question, and it's an important one: whose unity? It's easier said than done. Who gets to set the terms of unity? It can't be Trotsky, who doesn't have a consistent line, according to Lenin. Other articles addressing the fracturing of the party include, quote, the liquidators and the Lettish working class movement, quote, liquidationism defined, quote, the Narodniks and the factional coercion, quote, the disruption of unity under the cover of outcries for unity, quote, the working class and its press. You get the picture. There's a whole bunch of them here. Trotsky receives particular scorn in this volume for his creation of the newspaper Borba. Lenin says that while trying to advocate for unity, Trotsky is actually, well, A, he doesn't understand and he can't explain the historical disagreements among the Marxist trends. Two, he fails to understand that the main specific features of group division are nominal recognition of unity and actual disunity. And three, Trotsky is championing factionalism while under cover of, quote, non factionalism, according to Lenin. I think it's absolutely fascinating and important to keep in mind that the factionalism at this time occupied the majority of Lenin's ink spilled. Of course, the factionalism is just going to intensify and internationalize as the war starts, but let's not get ahead of ourselves quite yet. The so called national question became particularly acute at this time because of the trial of a Jewish subject, Manaheim Mendel Belize, accused of ritually murdering a child. Belize was acquitted, but not before it sparked an explosion of anti Semitic activity throughout the Russian Empire. The old question about Jewish identity reemerged not just in the party itself, but throughout the empire and in the Duma. So, this volume contains one of Lenin's most articulate formulations of the national question in the form of a response to the Polish socialist Rosa Luxemburg. In The Right of Nations of Self Determination, Lenin makes the point that, quote, for the complete victory of commodity production, the bourgeoisie must capture the home market, and there must be politically united territories whose population speak a single language, with all obstacles to the development of that language and to its consolidation in literature eliminated. Therein is the economic foundation of national movements. The article then goes on to expand upon that idea. The real key being that the nation state is the quote norm of capitalism, providing the best conditions for capitalism to thrive, while the multinational states like Russia at the time and the Austrian Empire, represent backwardness, their archaic imperial formations. In making his case, Lenin also discusses a lot of history in this piece, and it's interesting to see his historicism firsthand. He talks about how the years between 1789 and 1871, the unification of Germany, were the formation of national movements, pointing out that the period was delayed in places like Eastern Europe and in Asia. In some, Lenin was against all forms of what he called bourgeois nationalism, while upholding the majority of the equality of various nations. Another important point that he makes becomes particularly important later when we get to the USSR. That is, that the recognition of the right for a nation to secede is actually not increasing the danger of state disintegration, but actually reducing it. Because, and this is important, the working class recognizes solidarity through class above solidarity through national identity. There are many more articles in this volume, but they all have to do more or less with liquidationists, Narodniks, and Trotskyist opposition. So there's really no need to go back over those things. There are some articles about Ireland, which are important if you're interested in. The national question is obviously an important emerging debate on the eve of World War One, and it's worth bringing up here again because it becomes the principal point of fracture within the Second International as the war begins. So we will follow Lenin's position throughout the war. And when we come back in July, after 2 months of hiatus, we will begin coverage of Lenin's writing during the war and up to the October Revolution. So until next time, I'll see you in 2 months. Peace.